YouTube video where we'll be reviewing the newest release from Mantic Games, which is Star Saga. Star Saga is the new board game from Mantic Games, which is in the same vein as Dungeon Saga, their successful release from a couple of years back. This one has also been kickstarted, and it comes as a core set here, which is the retail version, and also there's a Kickstarter exclusive version which will go to backers at the end of November. There's also planned expansions over the course of the next year or two, and obviously we'll review those as they come up. So let's have a look at what's inside. So this is what the core set looks like. You can see that it's high quality cardboard with a nice coloured picture on the front. You can see as well down the sides, more colouring around the sides here, just showing more of the detail of what the miniatures would look like when they're painted up to a high standard. And underneath we have, again, showing all of the details of all of the miniatures that you get inside. So let's have a look and see what is in there. So when you open the box, you can see that we come with the rule book itself, the mission book. You can see that inside we've got a whole bunch of miniatures, and we've got some cards. Underneath this plastic insert we have some more plastic bits and the card layouts for the floors and the tokens as well. So we'll look at all these bits individually. There is some really nice art, these sort of studio images that have been shown here inside, on the inside of the sort of lower part of the box, and you can see again that they really show what, with good lighting, good painting, you can achieve with these miniatures. So let's start with the first things first. This is a game for 1 to 5 players, and this is the rule book that you'll have. Again, high quality, nice and crisp. You can see again it tells you all of the contents that you would require in here. Everything that should be in place, including your mercenary figures, your bosses and your minions, and a whole bunch of terrain stuff as well, plus all your cards and your layout things as well. And it takes you a stepwise way through the rules, starting with one beginning mission. This will look very familiar to people if they've played Dungeon Saga. And it talks you through sort of a very simple mission with one person for the first scenario, just to give you the core mechanics down without testing you too much, and then you move on to more detailed ones and extra bits that you can do throughout as we move on from there. This game can play from 1 to 5, so you can play with artificial intelligence running as the Nexus player, so that's the sort of dungeon master as it were, and there's details about how to do that. Or you can play with 4 players taking on the mercenaries, which are the heroes in this game, versus the Nexus, which is sort of the overarching enemy as it were. It may not be a named enemy, it might just be a sort of apocryphal sort of thing, and that can, like I say, that can either be a dungeon master role, or it can be created by a sort of set of artificial intelligence decks. Then we have the missions here, so this is a mission book. I'll show you a little bit closer there, the Eris contract, and again, like I said, these missions start very simple. We've got the details of the mercenaries themselves, all the different characters here. We've got Erica Delinsky, Kirby the robot, Francesco the Devil Salvaggio, who's like a flame-wielding mercenary. We've got Wrath, who people who know a previous sort of Dead Zone, which is the same Warpath world that this is setting, will remember him from the original Kickstarter for that. Ogun Helkari, who's a Forge Father, and Elisa, who is a new race in this particular rendition of the Warpath Universe, but from and sort of a mystic sort of character. And then we've got the bosses here, and there's a few different ones there. We won't go into too much because there might be some spoilers if I did, so I'm going to keep that quite quiet for now. But you can see the missions are laid out fairly nicely here. Try and get that a bit closer so you can see. So again, you can see that here what you would do is you would start at this point. These are all set out for where things are in the mission, and you place out your map as that. And like I said, it's very similar to Dungeon Saga, but it really is, I think, it's accepted as a tidying up of the rules from Dungeon Saga, so that things should be a lot crisper in this game and less ambiguity in certain situations. And obviously we won't go through all of them, but there's plenty of missions in here, and you can see that as they get on, they get greater complexity in what they're doing and in the amount of miniatures and terrain pieces that you have down. So these are the components, these are the card components. You can see they're a nice thick card, about 2mm thick there, all punched off, obviously to be punched out. You've got your terrain pieces here, you can see that these are cubed, so your miniatures move around on the cube. Various other icons that are casualty markers, mercenary markers, different things for different scenarios. These are for entry points. And these are your range markers, so everything's done there without using a tape measure. They're double-sided obviously, so you can see that there's some interactions here. These entry points have been closed off by being turned red. There are different map sections on the back so that you can sort of change up your board. It's quite a common thing in these sort of games. And we've got a few more of those here, so that's one. We've got another one there. Here we are, we have Salvaggio's Flamer template, which is really nice. And the fourth one here, and this one's even got a little bit of gore for us, which is always nice, isn't it? This is our fourth map section, so you can see they've got quite a lot of different variants here, and like I say, there will be expansions in the future which I'm sure will broaden the number of template tiles that we have. So what we have next are these mercenary cards, and these are really nice cards here. You can see that they contain a stat line. This is for Erika Dolinsky, who's one of the main characters, and a health bar here. They also have a series of details here about what the weapons are and any special abilities that they can do here. They're nice double-sided, very nice art on the back there, same art as on the front cover. And you've got one of these for each of the characters. So you've got Erika Dolinsky, you've got Wrath, Francesco the Devil, Kirby the Robot, Ogan the Forge Father, sort of a space dwarf, and Alais the Kayawan, who's a sort of a mystic. Okay, so those are your mercenaries, so you'll be picking, from each scenario you'll be picking to use those, and then we have our bosses who will be the sort of end of level baddies really, so you've got various different ones here with different, this one's quite a big guy with lots and lots of health. Okay, these different ones here, and again I won't show you all of these because there could be some spoilers in there, so I don't want to do that for you. So these are some of the other cards that you have in the game. So you can see that there's a range of different things here. You've got your minion cards. So these are cards that tell you the stat lines of, sorry, that should be in that one, stat lines of your different enemy minions, including a resource cost they come with to play, the stat profiles here, what weapons they have, and a little bit of art obviously, and you've got various different ones there for what can be put against your characters. You then have some equipment, so these are things like force fields, sentry guns and so on, things that are generally deployed either by the mercenaries or by the Nexus player. Some psychic powers, again these are things that there's a couple of psychic models in this game and they'll be using their mind powers to gain advantage. A very large deck of Nexus cards, so these are cards that are played by the Nexus player, and they have different things. They can either be used to fund minions being played or having extra activations, or they can be used to have the special abilities that actually come up on them, or to play events to interrupt the mercenary player's turn. And they gain a hand for those each turn. But obviously there's a very large deck here, so, and they've also got a leveling system where they start with certain basic ones at the beginning, so that they're not too hard when you're starting to learn the game. We've got some other smaller cards here. They're all pretty standard size cards, some rare items that people might be able to pick up, some skills that your mercenaries can develop, whether they're shooting, general. So there's a leveling up ability in this. Loot that they might pick up, so medipacks, different weapons, energy bar, things that they might pick up to improve their ability to do things, and certain mission bonuses as well, so again things that you actually get that are important for the mission. And again I won't show those too much. So the next thing to talk about is the dice. You've got attack dice here in red and defense dice in blue, and they're the same whoever's attacking, whether it's the mercenaries or the Nexus player, and they come with degrees of success. So these are minor success, normal success or exceptional successes. And what they do is these dice basically counter off against each other. So if you rolled this and you defended with this, they would actually each negate each other, so nothing would be done. If this was a blank, what would happen is these two would disappear, these two would disappear, but this one would lead to a wound going through because the defense had nothing to block this. So it's a relatively simple mechanic, but I think it should work quite well in this sort of game where it is very much a pick up and play sort of game, where each mission is dictated to you what you start with, and so therefore I think that this sort of thing keeps the bookkeeping down very, very low indeed. So next we'll talk about some of the miniatures that come with it. So there's a large number of miniatures that come in this game, and this is one that is one of the beasts that you might have to face. This is called an aberration. This is the same sculpt if people have got Dead Zone or Warpath, the other sort of large-scale miniature games that Mantic produce. So this is exactly the same sculpt as that, but it's made of a high-quality plastic and it paints up. You can see the detail on it's very, very good. So it paints up very, very nicely. Other newer miniatures, we have some little bits of terrain, and we have the main characters that the main bosses. So we have here what's called a Shovar, which is a sort of psychic squid. This one has been actually mutilated and has sort of various added on electrical devices and so on, making him quite a nasty piece of work, and probably because he's mostly suffering in pain. And again, you can see the detail on him is very, very good. It's nice soft plastic, but it's similar to what they produced before and seems to paint up very, very well on their previous ranges, such as The Walking Dead that they produced. We have another guy here, Commander Graves. He is, there we go, you can see him. And again, he's a sort of a security guard, really. He's the boss of those. Here we can see we have this Enforcer model, who is very nice in the standard sort of like heavy armour that they wear in their Enforcer range, for, like I say, in the same in these other games that they produce, Dead Zone and Warpath. And then finally we have this guy, he's sort of the evil mastermind, as it were, Dr. Lucas Coiner. And again, you can see he's like a bit of a Doc Ock sort of character. And again, very, very nice indeed. So as is common in board games, they have put different colours for different things. So the heroes and the bosses are in blue plastic, and the minions are in red, which we'll come to in a moment. You can see here some of the sort of extra equipment that goes with these characters. So these are the sentry guns, and these are mines or force fields that have been deployed. These are really quite small, they could easily get lost, so I would suggest that you bag those as soon as you open them. The sentry guns are very nice though, and for scale purposes I'll just put back with one of those miniatures that we had before. You can see that they're pretty good, and they look very nice, I think, on the table. So for the heroes themselves, the mercenaries, we've got here Kirby. So this is a robot, I think probably one of my favourite of them all, because he's just so cool to have a robot that's a hero, and he looks basically like a like some sort of support droid, doesn't he? But he's very, very nice. These look like they just need plying apart. Usually warm water is all that's required to do that. So that's Kirby. We have Erika Dolinsky, the sort of nominal head of the mercenary faction. She's sort of striding forwards there, loaded up with her laser rifle, and again sort of fully loaded in a sort of science fiction combat sort of outfit. We have Wrath, who is he's got a very interesting backstory, which is a bit of detail, and I won't explain it here, but he's a very interesting model, sort of close combat, especially you can see his sword's been bent there, but this is just soft plastic, so that'll straighten up without any problem whatsoever. He looks very, very nice indeed. Francesco Salvaggio, the Devil, with his heavy flamer. So he has, his backstory is that he has been horribly burned but still uses flamers, which seems a bit, seems like he hasn't really been following the safety advice. But he looks pretty cool. He's got a big heavy trench coat and extra cylinders there of, it's like a butane canisters, which he can use as his special ability to throw them. So that's a nice sort of touch as well. And he uses that flamer template we mentioned before. Here is Elias, Carawan, so she's like a psychic. And she looks like a psychic because she's got knees that bend the wrong way, she's got a funny head. And that's generally how psychics look in my world, but here she is. Again, I think that one picked up quite nicely. And then finally we have Olgan, the Forge Father. So he's like a space dwarf in this Warpath world. You can see he's placing down one of these force fields on mines. He's got his pistol here, and also he's got what is a sort of an extra arm for doing stuff at the back here. So he may well be quite good at technical challenges like undoing locks on doors, or to access databases and so on, as I suspect Kirby is as well. So here we have the 24 minion models in red plastic, and that takes a total number of miniatures that you get in this game to 35, which alone is, you know, certainly good value for money. If you know from their other ranges of Dead Zone and Warpath, you will recognise certain of these models already. So these ones here are what are called the GCPS Rangers, and these are GCPS Troopers. So that is a faction in Dead Zone and Warpath. And if we have a close look at these, you can see that the quality of the miniatures actually there is really quite high. These again are a softer plastic than hard plastic that they produce for those other ranges. But actually there are a lot more detail on there. There's really quite a lot of detail on these, and they will go very, very nicely. These are the Rangers because they have the closed helmets and the shorter carbines. That's one pose, and then there's another pose here which has actually a flamer on. Here is his flame tank underneath the petroleum spirit or whatever it is that he fires out of there, and you can see on the back he's even got a storage canister for that as well. So they're very nice. They're actually very different sculpts to what's available in their other Dead Zone and Warpath things. So this is a trooper. You can see one of the sculpts there. There is another sculpt of a trooper running forwards. And then finally another trooper sort of gesticulating in a sort of like he's telling others what to do sort of way. Then we have some totally new sculpts, new models. So these aren't available in Dead Zone or Warpath yet, but I'm aware that there are ideas that there will be a faction based on this group later. This is a plague victim. And you can see he's running forwards. He's sort of been experimented on. He's got some wires here on his back, which sort of shows that, you know, not all is well in the GCPS and what they're willing to do to people. And again, you can see this one as well. He looks relatively tortured on his face there. And again, he has clearly been sort of wearing normal clothes as if he's been sort of an experiment in the lab. And the people responsible for that is these guys, the laboratory technicians. So here is one of those. You can see this one just holding what looks like a knife. Pretty underprepared for combat, as you can imagine. They're there doing their science, and they're just someone comes and invading them. This person here has a similar sort of outfit, but what is a shock baton. So that is sort of to not exactly do too much damage, but to just sort of control people. Presumably been using it on those plague victims. And then to protect them, because this is a secret science and they need protection because they know it's wrong, we have some security guards. So these guys here have got sort of similar, sort of modern sort of looking weaponry with machine guns really. And again, you can see a very nice sculpt. We've got 3 poses for those. This one just talking into a mouthpiece while sort of striding forward with a casual sort of gun at an angle like you could see walking around an airport or something. And the final sculpt here again, just sort of casually walking forwards. Again though, looking with that same sort of weaponry. And there again from the rear. So that's all of the miniatures. So you can see that you get an awful lot in here with the miniatures. So even if you wanted to use these miniatures for Dead Zone or Warpath rather than for the board game, you couldn't really go wrong, I don't think. So here we have some of the terrain pieces that are available in this game. There's actually much more than this. I've just cut this down so we can talk about the different types rather than showing you every last piece. But you can see that there are certain larger pieces here which would effectively form blocking terrain that you couldn't be able to shoot through. This one is a cabinet and this one is a gun rack. We have like a large cylinder here, presumably full of some sort of horrible experiments or chemicals and so on. We have a number of computer terminals that you can see that you could access, or might just be there for scenery. We've got some crates and things as well, and some filing cabinets. What lab would be complete without filing cabinets? And then we have some tables as well, so we've got a sort of a normal sort of table that you might have in a mess room. We've got a slightly more sort of science looking table here, and then we've got this one that has actually bits on top, including a really nice touch, I think, which is some little cylinders and some notes and stuff like that to show what's been going on in the lab, what science has been doing there, and obviously keeping stuff underneath. Now some of these are a bit soft, they're a bit bendy, but that's okay, that one's pretty good. This one is perhaps not as well made as you would want, this sort of bench system. It's certainly not terrible, but you know, it's perhaps a little bit fiddly and a bit sort of warped. I think because the plastic's quite thin, so that's probably the one sort of piece that isn't so good. The rest of it is really nice indeed, and I can certainly see that these will be used. These will be bought as packs by various science fiction games like Dead Zone, Infinity, and so on. And I know they'll be releasing these as a terrain crate, which is something that Mantic do as well. A science fiction version of sort of just scenery pieces. Really did the same with their Dungeon Saga. And I'm sure they will sell really well because they're really nice and they won't be very expensive, I don't think, for what you get. And I can see them gracing many tables of different science fiction games, not just Mantic's games, but other ones as well. So they are really very nice. And this is, like I say, this is half of what you get in the core box set. Okay, so this is the last piece of stuff we'll talk about. Again, more terrains, and these are doors. Again, this is half of what you get. So you get a total of 6 small doors of 3 different styles, and you get 4 large doors, two squares wide doors of 2 different styles. And again, you can see that these are all double-sided, and the different styles are really nice because they allow you to sort of change up what you want to do. And again, these will look great in any science fiction game. It's a little more tricky to see how these translate, because obviously what you would have to do is you would probably have to cut them into whatever terrain you wanted to do them on, or at least trim off the floor piece here and stick them flush onto a terrain piece. But I think they could again see use outside of this game. And they just add that extra 3D element to it. So you've got a flat board, but you've got 3D miniatures, you've got 3D terrain, as we showed just before, we've got 3D doors. So it's going to really sort of give you that sort of feeling of claustrophobia inside a space station or a laboratory setting, or inside a ship, wherever the setting of the campaign happens to be. This one is in a secret lab. So again, really nice pieces. Mantic really have done very well with their plastic terrain and their miniatures in this set, I think, and they look very nice. So I hope you enjoyed that unboxing of Star Saga. So I think, as you've seen from my enthusiasm for it, it looks really nice. The miniatures are put together very nicely. All of the cards and the cards and the card punch outs look really nice. The terrain is fantastic, really nice. I can see lots of translation for other games as well from that. And if it plays well, which it looks like it does, very simple mechanics, I think it will be a really fantastic game that will last on your shelf for quite some years. Painting up the miniatures, even if you don't fancy doing that, obviously they're coloured plastic for different, whether you're good or bad, or higher levels or weaker levels of miniatures. And so I think that still allows a lot of playability, obviously, although it would look very nice if you painted them up, including the terrain as well. So overall, I think Mantic have done a very good job of that, and I'd like to thank them for giving us a chance to have a look at it first. Like I say, it goes on retail later this year and comes out to Kickstarters in about a month's time. So I look forward to playing it, and I think we'll be sending up some back reps soon, as well as to the playthroughs of the missions. So thanks very much. Like, comment and subscribe, and let us know if there's anything else you want to see on Way to Fire.